Hey everybody, David the AI Guide here. Welcome to another episode on the AI Guide, and thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing, liking, and sharing, and also be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we continue to grow our presence in other ways too, including occasional articles published on Medium. And we cover a lot of cool stuff about AI, but let's just go back to the reason why I started the AI Guide, and that is that this decade, the 2020s, there will be severe disruption to job markets because of AI. And I'm concerned about younger people, and that includes my own kids, and I wanted to make sure that somebody was not only talking about this, but offering resources to prepare you for a very changed future. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is about 90 years old, but coming around again. So it's interesting because I saw this past week a video out of China of this huge dust storm overtaking some big city in China. And it really struck me because about a week before I saw this video, I had said to my son, you know what, with climate change and the droughts in parts of the country, it's going to end up like the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Well, that proved to be timely because a couple of days ago I saw an article out of NASA where NASA researchers who are also affiliated with Stanford University have been using satellite data to study the Midwest and soil erosion. So the Dust Bowl of the 1930s was caused by the farming practices at the time and severe drought and windstorms. And so looking at the exceptional drought now out west in the western United States reminded me that this can happen again. And so the drought is already happening. Then the question becomes, have farming practices changed at all? And it's very interesting. This study focused on the U.S. Midwest, and the reason for that is that the Midwest has been called the breadbasket of the United States, meaning it's where a lot of wheat, corn, and staple crops are grown. And the soil in the Midwest is exceptionally fertile, this article says, because of thousands of years of tall prairie grass creating a microbiome in the soil that made it very, very fertile. So what are they seeing? Well, it's interesting because 2022 will be the 50th anniversary of satellites studying the Earth. The first one was Landsat 1, and ever since then, and by next year, there'll be a 50-year continuous record of looking at changes in the Earth. And obviously, there's a lot of parts of the world doing these studies now. China is launching equivalent satellites. Russia, of course, has, and the U.S. has partners with the Canadians and Mexicans and others looking at the North American continent. And then there's other folks who are studying these changes in South America, and most particularly the Amazon, which is referred to as the lungs of the world. So it's very important that we understand what the climate patterns are doing because they're changing, and how that affects food, because we all need food to survive. And global population will hit 8 billion very, very shortly. So with a projection of 10 billion by 2030, by the way, I think it is 2030, maybe it's 2050, but I think it's sooner than that. how are we going to feed all these people? So it's interesting when the researchers at Stanford, who also are affiliated with NASA, looked at the U.S. Midwest, they saw that about a third of farmland has completely lost its topsoil in the U.S. Midwest. This means billions of dollars of lost productivity in terms of crop yield. So if you're a farmer, and I grew up on a farm in a small farm town, that's why I do segments on farming, because it's critical, it's important, and I know a little bit about it from growing up and spending my working life on a farm until I went to college. Farming practices have changed, and they are now changing even more rapidly, but still slowly, because some of these changes are expensive and there's an educational process involved. But with loss of all this topsoil, what farmers care about is yield, right? So they're only going to do things that increase their yield. That's why farmers use fertilizers. It's why they let fields lie fallow in the non-growing season, and traditional farming practices like tilling, which is turning over the soil. And it used to be done very deeply, like up to a foot below the surface. That part has changed mostly now. Tilling is done now, not deeply, but only on the first few inches of the surface. But this is where the topsoil is, so erosion can still happen. So where does AI come into this? Well, AI helps farmers because satellite data is so sharp now that it can produce data on the individual farm level. Farmers can, once the algorithms are written by researchers at Stanford, NASA, and other places, use this data to manage their farmland. This takes farm management to a whole new level. And you may remember in my interview with Professor Krentz, Vice Chair of the Computer Science Department at UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara, and an expert in AI, she said that the goal was to get AI knowledge of farmland down to the square inch level. So with satellites becoming more prevalent and much sharper vision, we have again the avalanche of data that we've talked about before, where there's so much data, it can only be processed by AI, and AI can take this data both in real time and process it, but more importantly, look at these historical trends over nearly 50 years now to help farmers better manage their farmland and prevent this loss of topsoil that significantly degrades crop yield. So if we're going to feed the very soon 8 billion people in this world and the pretty soon 10 billion people in this world, we need to leverage AI to maximize crop yield while protecting the soil. And I'll link the article because they talk about a bunch of different ways to do this that I don't have time for. But again, we focus on AI. So what does this mean for you, younger folks? It means if you decide to go into agriculture, it's totally different. It used to be unending manual labor. Well, now with modern machinery and AI, and we've talked about other aspects of AI like self-driving tractors and AI-driven harvesters and fertilizer applicators and stuff like that, you're basically going to end up being a data analyst and a farmer. So AI is substantially changing farming, and this is going to dramatically accelerate during this decade, the 2020s. And so this is a career to think about, because the manual work has gotten less due to new tools and automation, and the brain power required is getting more and more with the introduction of AI and advanced crop management techniques. So, food for thought for you guys when considering your careers. And thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Read the articles on Medium. And we appreciate your support. Please tell your friends and support us on Patreon. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.